All right. So we're going to talk a bit about combination drills in general first, and then I'll lead into this one. Your mindset for shooting skills in combination is very, very different than shooting skills in isolation, right? In isolation, you want to push and find that failure point. That's what you're looking for. For combination drills, the failure point is not on an individual skill that same way. It's not in the push. Your failure point on combination drills is not being able to string enough skills together consecutively without making a mistake. Your error point is basically your incident rate of error when you combine skills. The other data metric you really have to pay attention to is how far you are off from the isolated skill. In other words, if my PR draw to a 7-yard open target is 0.7, but when I put that in the context of a Vice Presidente, it's 1.1, there's an issue there, right? I need to bring my draw in the Vice Pres up to my draw on my personal best in isolation. It'll never be the same. You will never pull off PRs on an individual skill when you combine skills. That's just not how the brain works, right? Performance degradation is a very real thing, especially when you add in stress, which we will be adding in, because it makes things better. It's like the spice in the stew, right? There's a lot of different combination drills. Vice Presidente is a combination drill, not an isolation drill. LPRES, right? USPSA classifiers, for the most part, are a combination. They are less complex than what we're going to do today, but they're still combination drills, and they still should be done. Am I making sense? What you want to do when you're working skills in combination is two different things. Layer on more and more complexity until you overload that processor in your head. That's your failure point, right? The other thing is decrease the distance between your personal best and what you can do in combination, right? The way you know you've overloaded the computer is when you start making simple mistakes, right? Your rate of error is your metric for that. Remember when I talked about in isolation drills, mistakes that doesn't matter. What matters is patterns in the technique. It's different for this. Now we're paying attention to the mistakes. Am I making sense? Because that is the pattern. How often do I make mistakes? That is the actual pattern for this. Everybody got it? All right. This is a huge, huge thing for most shooters because most shooters don't work on this. Not in any organized fashion. They'll do, El Presidente or something, but they'll treat it like an isolation drill, right? They'll push on it like they're working skills in isolation instead of doing it in this fashion, This has made huge improvements to my ability as an on-demand shooter. It really has. Huge improvements. The drill we're going to do was invented by a friend of mine that several of you guys actually know. We were just talking about him, Les Kismartoni. He's known as Les Pepperoni on the interwebs. He's a huge fan of the comic strip Calvin and Hobbes, so this drill is called Calvinball. It is a fantastic way to practice for consistency for working skills in combination when you have about 3 to 5 people. So we're a little unwieldy today, but it's not so many that we can't do it. I'm going to make some modifications to it to make it flow better today, right? The way it's typically done is the first shooter up picks one shooting position and a set of shooting skills from that position. It could be as simple as a one-shot draw, or it could be a multiple array of targets working transitions, but it's one shooting position. If he shoots it clean, that sets the par time for that round, all right? When you have 3 to 5 people, then everyone has 3 chances to beat the par. We're gonna do 1 chance to beat the par today to make it flow faster because we have more people. When you do it with 3 to 5, it's gonna be 3 chances to beat the par. The person who wins that round now picks 2 shooting positions. You do not have to reproduce the first shooting position from the other round. It can be anything you want. The winner of that round picks 3 shooting positions. Then you pick 4, then you pick 5, and usually between 7 and 10, your brain turns to oatmeal, right? But that is the failure point. That's where the growth occurs for these drills, unlike isolation drills. Am I making sense? All right. There's some more things I want to talk about when you're doing stuff. Oh, here's some important points that are also different when you're doing skills in combination, right? If I'm working a skill in isolation and I know it's going to be a bad rep, I'll simply stop. If I get a bad grip on the draw on a bill drill, I'll just stop. Because that's going to be a wasted rep, right? That's going to be a wasted rep. That is not true for this. For this, you've got to fight through it because now you're applying those individual skills. Do I make sense? Mm-hmm. So unlike isolation stuff where you can just call a mulligan and start over again, there's no mulligans on this. Doesn't matter. Once you go, and it's done, right? No matter the combination drill, a good rule of thumb, I believe, is to not do more than 3 to 5 repetitions in a single set of one drill. Because otherwise you're just burning in that particular pattern. What you want to do is build the toolbox to the point where you're good at all the patterns, right? So if you do 15 repetitions on one pattern, it's not going to carry over to everything else. You're not building that consistency on demand. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? We'll talk about interleaving this with other drills in a minute and some other things. But I want to get to it because it'll make more sense once we start shooting, right? For this drill, if you miss at all, your time does not count for that run. Everybody understand? 0 failure. You cannot miss. There are no makeup shots for this drill, right? That's different when you test something a lot of the time. Like if you're testing the same sort of like mini stage kind of thing, I'd prefer to allow the makeup shots because that's a test, right? But what you're building here, what you're working on in this drill is lowering your incident rate of error, remember? So if you get an error, you failed. What that does is that puts psychological pressure on you while you run the drill to ensure that you're actually paying attention to the process of shooting, which is the key to putting things in combination. It's very much process-based. All right, I'm gonna call the first at least 2, maybe 3 positions, and then after that, you guys are gonna call it and run it, and we'll go from there. All right, let's do it.